advertise with us, reach us via the email marketing@courtfm.co.ke or call us on 0714 308 277. Court FM. Let the music play. Welcome to NK Home Care Services, where quality healthcare meets the comfort of your home. We offer professional nursing care, caregiver support, mental and neonatal services, physiotherapy, post-surgery care, palliative care, and ambulance services, all tailored to your needs. Our mission is to empower you or your loved ones to live with dignity and independence. With compassion, respect, and professionalism, we're here to support your journey to a better health. Visit us today at 54 Real Estate off Mombasa Road or call us on 0768 400 800 or find us online at www.fifthgenerationaloutsourcing.com. NK Home Care Services, caring for you wherever you are. Court FM. Let the music play. You're listening to Court FM. Let the music play. You're listening to Court FM. Let the music play. Picture with Obet Oriku and Likuyani Eli. For more information, visit www.mizani254.org. Mizani 254, where the scales of balance are restored and meaningful conversations thrive. To advertise with us, reach us via the email marketing@courtfm.co.ke or call us on 0714 308 277. Court FM. Let the music play. Court FM. Let the music Welcome play. To NK Home Care Services, where quality healthcare meets the comfort of your home. We offer professional nursing care, caregiver support, mental and neonatal services, physiotherapy, post-surgery care, palliative care, and ambulance services, all tailored to your needs. Our mission is to empower you or your loved ones to live with dignity and independence. With compassion, respect, and professionalism, we're here to support your journey to a better health. Visit us today at 54 Real Estate off Mombasa Road or call us on 0768 400 800 or find us online at www.fifthgenerationaloutsourcing.com. NK Home Care Services, caring for you wherever you are.
A very, very good evening. A warm welcome to Mizani 254 on this Monday evening after having a very long day. I hope you are ready for the conversation of the night. My name is Likuyani Eli and we are coming to you live from Court FM studios, which is spread across the continent. We are live from Nairobi, Kenya. We are also live on Mizani 254. And definitely it is time to have the bigger picture conversation. On the other side of the studio, we do have Obezoriko, who is my co-host, and I see he's also trying to get the mic on his end. So sit back, relax, and let's have a conversation about the multi-billion scandals. Looks like it is our time to eat. That I don't know about you, but when it comes to me, I think I've been losing more weight because I have nothing to eat. Probably I need to ask Serikali's idea because clearly Serikali has a lot of money to spend. I don't know if your day is coming along well, but I'd love to take the opportunity to actually welcome you to Mizani 254, where the scales of balance are restored and meaningful conversations thrive. Now, on our platform, we do allow extreme sides of conversations, but that does not mean you are allowed to insult or look as if you're looking down upon other speakers. That said, you will observe parliamentary language while addressing the meeting, and as that is also said, please be aware of the time limit that we have. Let's discuss the issues, not the individuals. Well, sometimes it's impossible to discuss the issues minus the individuals, but let's not character assassinate when it's really not needed. That said, I see, Obed, if you can pick up the mic, I'd love to get a glimpse of your voice tonight. I know you have been all over trying to make the ends meet. I don't know if you're meeting or the ends decided to meet or not, but I'll definitely be finding out. For those of you who are also watching us live on our various platforms, feel free to interact with us. Under the stream, you are able to send in the chat, and therefore don't chat on the stream, rather beneath the stream, there is the chat box where you almost can reply to the stream. That way you are able to make your statement, and we'll be able to review them later on. If need be, we'll also be able to read them during the live stream. We are live on YouTube, courtesy of Mizani 254. We are also live on our X platform, that is at Mizani 254. We are also streaming live on our radio channel, and that is Court FM. So make your way to Court FM, that is on www.kotfm.co.ke, in case you're driving to work but you don't want to miss the conversation. At this juncture, the conversation of the night, it's really on something that you and I have seen in the past. Today I happen to have been reading through the dailies, and something struck my mind when it comes to the issues of budgetary allocations, among others. But what also stood out was the aspect of the scandals that are in anytime we mention mega projects. Now, interesting enough, I happen to have come across an article which was also the headline on the Daily Nation, which was titled 11 billion shillings Talanta Stadium Scandal. Now, the breakdown here is very interesting because they talk about, the perceived amount that was supposed to be spent on this project, which was 35 billion Kenyan shillings. But then the amounts have incrementally come to 45,000 shillings, and the audits cannot really find a justification to that. One of the other issue is there is also the aspect of open tendering system, which there was no also justification for bypassing the same. There's also the aspect of the Auditor General ignored, rather the Attorney General who was ignored in the process, and the cost of overrun. So among others, and that's why I thought probably it's time for us to really have this conversation and be able to understand where exactly is the problem and how can we be able to fix it. And by the way, we might just be having you as a speaker and I'm unable to see, so in case you're there, just give me a thumbs up in order for me to be able to cue you on Obeds. Sometimes this happens quite a lot when we're having such conversations, so just give me a thumbs up in case you're not able to join in. I'll be able to do one or two things to reset the system. That said, allow me to give you a little bit of literature here. So in case you didn't know, protecting public resources is a constitutional obligation for every citizen, and not just the government agencies. I know often the note we've talked about the issue of the EACC, among other bodies who are supposed to be our watchdogs. But then every year, the National Treasury prepares a budget outlining the spending plans. And when it comes to the spending plans, it is the spending plans for the country. For the year ending 30th June 2026, that budget was approximately 4.5 trillion Kenyan shillings, and includes approximately 700 billion for development expenditure. Well, some of you might be wondering, why all this? So we have seen a couple of development projects, but remember, this is a political business cycle, and you and I can agree you've seen a lot of political handouts coming out in all other forms that you might want to imagine, from from Nyota to the rest, and I'm not going to drop names as of now. So last week, the government issued a new Eurobonds, effectively raising $2.25 billion. Now, the money will be used to refinance $500 million of existing Eurobonds, while the remaining $1.75 billion will be used to plug into the budget deficit. Again, we are running a wider budget and deficit because, KRA is not meeting its revenue collection targets. And I know, Diamonds, you love discussing that part of KRA. So probably when you have time, I'll definitely welcome you on board to be able to speak to us. That said, we are at a point whereby every single morning you flip through our national daily, you see scandal this, scandal that. As I said in my opening remarks, this morning we woke up to 11 billion Talanta Stadium headline on the Daily Nation. The article again highlights a report by the Auditor General which reveals an 11 billion shillings exposure due to punitive contract clauses, risking massive penalties from delayed payments. Talk about how government agencies and government itself negotiates, and this is plus the expatriates negotiates for some contracts. It also highlights breaches like awarding the contract without Attorney General clearance and using non-competitive procurement methods, something that I mentioned also in my opening remarks. So as we continue to mobilize resources, one wonders, what exactly is the end goal? We are sourcing funds both locally and externally. And the beloved Kenyans, why do we have every single year in, year out, number of scandals, and not just in millions? As I said sometime last year in one of our conferences, we have become billionaire thieves. So why do we embrace thieves of public funds is my question to the room. And that said, how do we solve this once and for all? And that's why tonight we want to have a bigger picture view of this conversation. Joining me on the other side is Obeds. And Obeds, I trust you are doing well, and welcome to the conversation, sir. How are you doing?
Thanks, Eli. I hope I'm clear. I'm trying to make my way home. I just left the office. So there's a lot that has to be made out of this. I think it's nothing new in our country that we love to take away from the public coffers in the form of contracts and procurement. And that has been the case for quite a long time. Waking up to the Talanta audit queries, honestly, nothing new here because I think there was a red flag raised quite a while back. The amount that was initially quoted and the amount that is now being talked about, a variance of about 11 billion. It's really a huge variance. And the only assumption we can make is that there is a justification for that variance. But as it is, the Auditor General is questioning that difference. Is it a conclusive position that money is missing? Maybe that's the question we need to ask and also wait for that question to be answered. But when you think about it, there are quite a number of other issues and scandals that the Auditor General has flagged, and they haven't got proper explanations for it. Talanta Stadium is one of the stadiums that will be used for purposes of the African Cup of Nations co-host that we have between us, Uganda and Tanzania. But the challenge we've had in this country is that despite what is important and good, we've always found a way to pilfer public resources using procurement process. And so I won't be shocked if we're not able to account for that money and eventually don't get an answer for it. But it begins to ask us, when did we decide that stealing is no longer about millions or thousands, but billions? And is it because nobody is being held accountable for losing public resources in the huge amounts that we talk about? And maybe to juxtapose that with the fact that look at SHA today, one that we spent over 104 billion in installing a system that does not work for anybody except for the people who set it up and the organizations that are related to the people who are in power. It is a similar scenario. We say the military or KDF are helping with building Talanta, but there's a Chinese organization that is doing the actual building, and the military is supervising. But for me, even listening to some members of parliament and one very, very senior person, a fourth in command in quotes, if you put it, listening to Gladys Paul-Cholet talk about this issue today morning, honestly makes me wonder if you cannot defend you cannot talk about obvious, straightforward questions for lack of clarity and try to give explanation to the public how that is a problem to us. And the business of justifying why you feel it is correct, even when we don't have the backing of the law, is my biggest concern. The other question I keep asking is, when you become a politician and you support a particular political party, even if you say it is a members club, how do you justify the lack of agency, the lack of the fact that as a person, you're not able to make an informed decision, even that contradicts what the general people believe in, just because you want to look like a psychopath? And that has been the biggest problem this country has. We see problems, but we try to justify them based on the side of the political side that we've taken. And in so doing, the public loses much more, whereas there's an expectation that we should be able to account for what it is and take responsibility, or push people who are in position to account for what the public should be getting. So, Eli, I think for my maiden speech, for contribution to the conversation, there's a lot that is riding on this. There's politics. In terms of, William Ruto trying to justify that, he's built a stadia and he's brought African Cup of Nations to Kenya. But at the same time, the country is losing money for lack of accountability to try to explain why would the cost of a project rise from 35 billion to 45 billion point five plus, and they're not able to justify why there's that extra resource that is required to complete that project. That's my contribution.
Thank you, Obed, and I hear you. Thank you for those opening remarks. And again, we are discussing about the billions that keep missing every single day. You turn on that television set, every time you flip that newspaper article. And today, we are discussing about 11 billions that have been flagged by the Auditor General. Now, again, it is not conclusive that the money has been stolen, but we are not able to justify where this money went and why these rates are rising. But of course, a lot of concern is also about the tendering aspect of the whole conversation. And that's why we want to understand, when can we call this nonsense what it is once and for all and end this cat and mouse conversation about money, especially which is public money, being siphoned by a few individuals that is supposed to benefit the public good. And remember, we have been putting out a lot of conversation around the issue of public funds with our Did You Know series. If you haven't, just head on to our Mizani 254 handle or any other platform on Mizani. You'll be able to see some of those flips. And later on, we'll actually be giving you our Did You Know quote for the day. But that said, Obes, thank you very much. I hope you make it on time to be home, because this is a very heavy conversation. You might just need some water to sip on it. And for those of you who are watching us, thank you very much for making time to be here. Let's just cross over to the man who likes fireworks. Diamonds, good afternoon to you. How are you doing? Good evening.
Eli, good evening. Just confirm you can hear me clearly.
You are loud and clear. Proceed.
Okay, thank you. So first of all, I think we are used to too much nonsense as a people, and we are so used to a point that even when it happens, we don't feel anymore. I remember when we were young, they actually used to say that when you continue beating a child every day, it gets to a point when they cannot feel pain anymore. So I think we are headed to that direction as a people. Every other day we see these problems coming up, and we do not seem to demand, or we do not seem to get mad enough. I don't know when we will wake up and say enough is enough. I really don't know. But I hope we do. I hope we get there soon, because the mess continues, and every other day we go deeper than we were the previous day. Let me just go straight to the point of the day, which is about that Talanta Stadium. I think when that project was conceived, we had quite a good number of questions around it. So first of all, I don't think the whole project was not tendered to anyone. And in fact, at the time By the time the government was releasing the financial plan, they were releasing how the project will be funded, they were releasing how the project will proceed. We had contractors on ground. So this is a fast thing. Like they already signed everything behind our back. Secondly, when the issue of financing came out, I think Parliament had approved about 35 billion shillings to do that project. Now, this 11 billion issue is coming up because the project at the end of the day is now being done with about 45 billion. So there is a 10.8 billion that was added in the road between Parliament and State House. Hapo kwa hiyo barabara there is usually a kiil somewhere there, and probably at that point in time they actually felt that it was the amount of fuel they needed to drive when they were carrying the documents was not enough, and they added some 11 billion shillings. Just for context purposes, if I give you 1,000 bob today, 1,000 shillings, the 1,000 Kenya shillings note,
Yep.
and you stack them together, stack them together one on top of the other, you will need about 1,100 kilometers to stack 11 billion shillings.
Mm-hmm.
So it's quite some money. It's quite some money. And if you decide to put the notes not on top of each other but next to each other,
Yeah.
I think you'll get about 1,600 kilometers. So it's enough money that you can put it. You can actually put on a road from Mombasa.
Yeah.
You do to Kitale, just one after the other. It will go all the way to Kitale, go all the way to Lodwa,
Yeah.
and you will still have more money that you can come back to Nairobi and put it all the way to Wajir.
Mm-hmm.
Or you can literally go to Moyale from Nairobi. So it's quite some money. But we are used to this mess as a people that, in fact, the stadium itself sits in what we could easily call government land because it was at some point owned by Telcom Kenya. But then a shoddy deal happened. They said it was 7 years ago. Don't remember the exact details, but a shoddy deal happened, and the current minister, uh, Joho, has been paid about 9 billion for that land. So think about it. The 11 billion that has been added, there is also another 9 billion that has gone to some people.
Yeah.
Because it is alleged that the land was actually being owned by an individual. And if that is not enough, this deal was conceived so badly that the stadium is supposed to return 15% earnings year on year for 15 years.
Mm.
It means we must repay 145 billion shillings by the time we will be done with that loan. Just so that we understand clearly the mess and the magnitude of this mess.
Yeah.
Government has never been able to repay any loan. In fact, they don't repay. Probably we are now finishing loans that were taken in the 1970s. What we do is every other time we do not pay the principal amount, we proceed and pay interest.
Yeah.
For those that we pay principal amount, before we finish that loan, we take another one. And you've given a very good example of the Eurobond that was taken last week.
Yeah.
Where there are Eurobonds that are supposed to mature 3 years from today, 4 years from today, and there was really no pressure. And they were not big Eurobonds. We are talking about 500 million and such like stuff.
Yeah.
What we proceed to do is we go ahead and borrow a bigger Eurobond.
Yeah.
So I'm giving this example to let you know that I do not expect this government or any other government to repay that stadium in 15 years. So we might actually end up repaying over 200 billion because the longer we extend the terms of that contract, which we will do. We will either extend that same contract or we will borrow more money to repay it. The same way we are doing with the Eurobonds. A Eurobond that was supposed to expire in 2028, we are now borrowing another one to expire in 2039. So we've added another 11, 12 years on top of that same loan. The SGR loan, the one that was supposed to, I think it was a 15-year loan from 2020 to 2035. We are already negotiating with the Chinese. I think we've had a good number of negotiations, and I think we are looking at extending that also. So at the end of the day, Eli, I think we are suffering from a cancer, a very bad cancer, and we are not ready to get it sorted out. This road starts in the head. I really hear governments talking about revenue collection, revenue mobilization, revenue target, and all those things. But when these revenues are leaking, when we are having uh, theft in, say, SHA, when we are having theft around education, I think last week we lost about 900 and something million to goes to schools and goes to students. No one gets arrested. No one takes responsibility. We just move on like nothing happened. It's like if today you are able to steal a billion from the government, the best thing they do is they look for another 1 billion. They come and tax more money from beds and tax more money from 254. And that is the cancer. That is the cancer we must treat. We might not treat it in this government because they are not ready to do it. In fact, they're getting us deeper into that hole. It's a rabbit hole. I don't know how we'll get out of it, but someone must get it sorted out. Thank you, Eli. I'll come back probably later.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Diamonds, and I appreciate your submission. You know, you've been able to lay out a lot of issues that we are struggling with, and this is not just a story that we are trying to have. I mean, it's a very serious issue that, as you say, it's a cancer that is eating us, and it's completely taking away the pride of being a Kenyan. I don't know if you are tuned in tonight and if you have a different perspective about the conversation you're having. I would definitely want to find out what you think about this conversation, and it's titled Our Time to Eat. Is it really our time to eat or their time to eat? Let's find out even as the conversation continues. 44 minutes after 8 p.m. We apologize for the late starter, but that means we'll be able to compensate for time lost. I want to cross over to you, 254, and good evening. How are you doing, sir?
Hope you can hear me well. Sorry, Eli. I hope you can hear me well.
Yes, we can hear you.
Good. Thank you.
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, thank you. Again, I have said this in previous conversations we've had, but every new week comes with new challenges, if we can call them new anyway. But I think we've had these conversations for a long time, and my first thought is that I've always said this before. There needs to be a time when people stop talking about this country as if it's a piece of cake or food that we are eating. Number one, because every single regime that is either campaigning or takes power, they always get into the same cycle of trying to put aside or set aside resources for particular agendas that no one really can make sense of. Now, having said that, I think the real questions, much as we pointed out the billions that are now under query and at Atlanta Stadium, for me, number one, the fact that there's an audit query in itself shows a very simple problem, that people cannot be accountable for the money that they have access to. Number one. And this is not a problem that starts only with Atlanta Stadium.
Yeah.
I think people who remember history remember that there's a certain redacted report that was released by a former cabinet secretary for finance, one Henry Rotich, about, money being pulled from the consolidated fund that cannot still today be accounted for.
Yeah.
I think we've seen a lot of these stories time and again, and maybe to echo what Diamonds has said, that this has been an exercise that, we as Kenyans need to say, hold on, wait a minute, let's stop here and let's just fix it. Simply because we can mention then, now we are heading to, I don't know if I can even say hundreds of scandals, but how many scandals can we count since time immemorial?
Yeah.
I remember of a scandal by Goldenberg. I remember Chicken Gate. I remember NYS. All these scandals have happened every other time, but what action has been taken? Absolutely nothing. How many audit queries have been raised, even including our county governments?
Yeah.
But nothing has been done.
Yeah.
Absolutely nothing. We sit here and yes, we can talk about Talanta Stadium, but are we really not asking ourselves, how is it that William Ruto walks to churches every other weekend, splashes money, which we do not know where it is coming from?
Yeah.
He promises money to a lot of people, to churches, to, people who visit him in State House. And people are not asking the right questions. Where is this money coming from? How is it being spent? And who is actually being accountable for it? We're not asking real questions when we hear
Yeah.
State House has blown a budget that has been planned for a full year in certain number of months. This is not the first time it's happening. If I'm not wrong, this is now the third time it is happening.
Yeah.
So when an audit query comes about, it really shows that there's something that is missing. There's information that is not being shared that the people who are asking these questions are satisfied on. And that brings me to a very important aspect that I saw today that I thought, my goodness, we have very, very, very strange people in our public offices, because
Yeah.
the government spokesperson stood out and was very happy to say that as a country we've signed on a new Eurobond. At the basic premise of what these guys came to office on, they said that they would stop this borrowing. In fact, they were very, very adamant, and they blamed the previous regime,
Yeah.
specifically the former president, for borrowing loans. Yet here we are. They have raised 2 point something billion dollars in a new Eurobond. Our debt right now stands at, my goodness, I even feel afraid of saying this money. But I think, like Damon said, there needs to be a time when we should sit back as a country and just say, stop. We have been told that our leaders have PhDs before, haven't we? So the real question is, in a country like this where people hold these PhDs and all these titles, and they've read, none of them are captains of industry. Very ridiculous that some of the richest people in this country are not innovators, they're not inventors, they have no industry to their name, yet they are billionaires.
Yeah.
Somebody goes through a vetting session and they say, I'm worth 800 million, 300 million, 1 billion. And no one just stops to say, "Hold 1 minute, don't you think this is a bit ridiculous what you're telling us?" For me, I think it is an important conversation to have,
Yeah.
yes. But I think the true conversation is, what then after all these audit queries? What then after these reports? What then after we see somebody being arrested and being condemned to prison for illegalities of corruption, and all of a sudden there's action in fines? It shows that as a society something is wrong. In our Kenyan fabric of existence, there's something that is wrong. And for as long as people are going to take mediocrity as acceptable standards, then I think something is very, very wrong with how we run our public offices. So the change does not only need to happen in State House,
Yeah.
the change needs to happen in all aspects of public spaces and public governance, because this is not a one person problem. It is a style of governance, our style of politics that encourages mediocrity all round.
Yeah.
Thank you, Eli. Back to you.
Court FM. Let the music play.
Thank you very much, 254. Just confirm you're able to get my signal from this end. Give me 100%. Awesome. Asante sana. So the fabric is an issue we are raising. Of course, the moral aspect, and what then when we receive all these report queries that are pointing to a systemic issue when it comes to how our public finances are managed. And that's why I want us to really have this conversation, and we are questioning what can we do once and for all, so that we don't have to wake up every morning to such kind of news. I'm happy that we are being joined by Stella on the conversation tonight. And Stella, the issue of public debt is being raised. The issue of auditors' query on these matters is being raised, among others. I would love to find out, where do you sit in this talk? And good evening to you. I hope you've been doing well.
Good evening, Eli, and the rest of the audience and speakers. Please confirm you can hear me, because I'm still seeing I am a listener from my POV. All right.
You are loud and clear, Stella. Kindly proceed.
Thank you very much. So I'll just be very, very brief. And my question, or my my point of view, is from the budgetary and appropriations side. When you look at the budget documents and the method that the Treasury says they are using to do or to appropriate funds to the various ministries, the idea is that we are using a zero-based budget. So this means we are starting from scratch. We are not looking at the numbers from the previous fiscal year and adding something. We are not doing, let's do 5% of what we appropriated to the Ministry of Health or to the Ministry of Education or to the Ministry of Defense. We are starting from scratch and saying that these are the things that we need as a ministry. We need to pay bills, we need to pay salaries. If you're looking at developments, we are looking at maybe doing a dam. If it's the Ministry of Roads, we are looking at road number 1, road number 2 in Turkana, another road in Rironi, another one somewhere else. So we are starting from scratch, and we know this is the approximate budget or amount of money that we are going to use. So the question then becomes, if a ministry has done this, why then are we looking at ministries and agencies overspending their money by almost double the amount that was prorated or appropriated for them? So that's number one. Number two, you're asking the question on how do we stop this once and for all? I do not have an answer, but for such things like this 11 billion we are seeing that the Auditor General has raised issues on, remember there was a budget at the start of this construction of this stadium. There was a budget, everything was budgeted for. Whoever budgeted and the committee that was in charge knew that this money is supposed to cater for this and this and this, and it amounts to, let's say, the 44 billion.
Correct.
So how the amount balloons by more than 10 billion will blow your mind, because if we sat down and agreed and saw that this is proper for this budget and will fit this particular project, why then does the budget go up by such a huge amount of money? So my conclusion is, as much as we say we have so many laws, I think we should put a cap on the amount of money that should go up for a project or for a ministry. If you're saying we are using the zero-based budget, then we are aware of what we are going to do within the fiscal year. There's no emergency that will come about within the year that justifies you blowing up your budget and almost doubling, because I don't see why your budget was 7 billion. And this was, again, we did a zero budget we approached it from that perspective and end up using 10 billion by month 6 or month 7, and then we are still supposed to finish this fiscal year. So that means that by the end of the fiscal year, you'll have spent almost double of the amount that was appropriated for you.
Yeah.
So it does not make sense if you are using one specific thing and you are saying we are using the zero-based budget because we think the previous budgets are not justified. So we want to justify the things that we are doing so that we are seeing where the money is going. But then what is the point if we will have a supplementary budget 1 and even supplementary budget 3s because we are not able to account for the money that we have already been appropriated for?
Yeah.
So that's number 1. Number 2, I think the feasibility studies, remember the conversation we had on Monday, Eli, about the infrastructure fund bill, and there was a clause that was talking about feasibility studies being done, time value for money being done,
Correct.
economic appropriateness of projects being done.
Yeah.
So I think this is a very, very nice approach, but it shouldn't stop with just being done and being taken to parliament. It should be made public, and we should be able to scrutinize every coin and see where it is going. We should be able to look at things from an economic point of view and decide, does this make sense? Because if we are buying, for example, one seat at 30K, then we should ask ourselves, is this really necessary? Is it an emergency? Because then we cannot be using huge amounts of money and just putting a blanket reason that we bought seats with 3 million. We want to do things and say we did this particular thing with 20 billion, and it just goes like that. I don't think that's quite sustainable for an economy. So for me, those would be my starting points, especially with projects. Let's have a cap for the amount of money that can supersede or surpass the budget that was allocated for a project, so that we don't have projects that are even doubling and tripling the amount of money that they were supposed to bring at the beginning. Because when you look at the project, for example, and I'm concluding, Eli.
Thank you. Yeah.
This Talanta Stadium, we were looking at 44 billion, and when we did our maths with the interest payments and all of these things, we were amounting to over 150 billion or something thereabout. So adding more to this particular project, and even seeing things like clauses which would bring penalties, huge penalties to the taxpayer without adding a single brick to this particular stadium, it's not something that you think a sane and a country or a government that is concerned about their citizen will do. So those would be my 2 cents, Eli, and back to you.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Stella. Yes, Obed?
So I keep asking this question, and I probably need to be guided. What is the requirement for all funds that government acquires on our behalf? Does the public need to know what the amount is and what is it being used for? Because I seem to have a problem with the fact that this country is averse to accountability and not asking the questions that really are important. Political people, deals are conceived in secrecy. We are told the amount. These amounts go up at some point, and there is no clear justification. Nobody's ever held accountable. So you keep wondering, is it that as a country we don't care about what is important? If the country is going to take a debt, or the state takes money on our behalf, why don't we know our debt portfolio? Exact amount, to whom do we owe, and how much we've paid? Because that has been the bone of contention for a very long time, and we don't seem to be getting this right throughout.
Thank you, Obed. And I love the fact that you've asked. Just a second, Stella. I love the fact that Obed has actually raised that question, because in our previous conversation, we did actually have a very interesting sit down with Stella, and we were able to look into the issues surrounding debt portfolio. Probably it's time to also do some revision to really be at the same, base. Stella, I cut you off. Can I give you the mic and then I have Diamonds? I see his hand is up.
Yes, just 1 minute. I don't think, and this is in the most polite way I could say it, that we do not know our debt or beds. I think we do know what we owe and what we have paid. We know the interest rates of our domestic debt, all of it, and the part of the international debt. The terms of some government to government debt and what do we call it? Multilateral debt. Those are maybe the details, the specific terms that we do not know. But if you look well, the CBK provides data on what debt we have. The Treasury also provides data on what we have. When we are doing the budget process, when the Finance and Planning Committee is submitting the reports and the appropriations, whatever, to the Parliament, there's always a section for what we owe, what we've paid, what we are going to pay in that fiscal year. So there's all of this information. Where my concern lies is what the money was used for. That is the specific problem that we have. Because if money is just borrowed and we have a blanket reason for borrowing, saying budgetary support or infrastructure support, so which specific infrastructure? If you're talking of budgetary support and we have given money to let's say the Ministry of Roads or the Ministry of Basic Education, what specifically did this money do if it was borrowed to fund this particular project? If we are told, yes, this money was borrowed to build Talanta Stadium, then what specifically in Talanta Stadium did it do? Did we buy seats? And if we bought seats, at what amount? If we are building a roof or a floor, what amount did this do? Did it take? So if we did that, we used cement, how many bags? So those are the details that miss. And I don't know if there's a country that does that, but even the minute details of what the money did would be very important, because then we can gauge the viability and economic sustainability of a project given the amount of money that it funded, because we want to see projects that are funded being able to repay themselves. We want to see, if you're doing this for this road, then what is the indirect benefit? How will we realize profits from this particular road, directly or indirectly? Does it make sense? If you're doing the larger good or the general good of the economy, then it also should make sense in that it's allowing or enabling or facilitating movement, for example, of kids going to school, or movement, for example, of taking products from farms to the market. So we do know where our debt is. We know what has been paid. We know what has been refinanced. But this money that we are repaying and this money that we are borrowing, what exactly is it doing?
All right. Thank you for that, Stella. I hope some of us have now been uploaded with more information in terms of our debt portfolio. But it remains a very thorny issue to a lot of us. That's why at this hour, I love to cross over to the next speaker. Thank you for all of you who are joining us on Mizani 254 this Monday as we look at the bigger picture. We are discussing the issue of the missing billions. Every time we flip through our dailies, anytime you tune on that radio, you will hear about missing billions. Again, we have insisted time and again that we no longer steal in millions. We are billionaire thieves, and that's the kind of country we live in. Is it just our time to eat, or is the greed too much? Because everyone seems to be in a rush to get as much as they can from this country called Kenya. And that's why 254 gets a bit perturbed when you call this country a cake. He does not want it to be referred to as a cake, but then everyone wants to have a piece of the cake. Thank you very much again for all of you who are watching us live on our different streams. If you have a question, just comment under the comment section and we'll be able to come to you. Let's cross over to you, Diamonds. If you can hear me, the mic is yours. Kindly proceed.
No, actually, I just wanted to say something. Obed was asking what might have the movement of cash, I think, between treasury, the loans, and the rest. Our biggest issue started in 2014 when Uhuru became president and Duale was the majority leader in parliament, what happened is they came up with what we call the Public Finance Management Act 2014. That was the time Kenya was borrowing, I think, its first Eurobond. Right after this Public Management Finance Act amendment, they amended an act that had just been amended in 2012. Not even amended, I think it was an existing act for 2012. So it had not even operated for more than 1 year. Now, what they changed in the act is the first of all is they allowed government to borrow using uh, an authorized person from treasury. So that means the government of Kenya would now commit to loans straight from treasury. They do not need any approval from parliament. So that is the biggest issue. What treasury does is after the borrowing has been done, what they do, they only release a statement and I think they go and update parliament. That's a very big loophole because they will borrow whatever they feel like and whatever they feel like. Secondly, they allowed government through treasury to actually be able to make payments using proceeds of these loans without taking them to the consolidated fund.
Mm-hmm.
So it means if I were to borrow from Hillel,
Yeah.
I would borrow money from Hillel and instead of putting it in my account, I would send it straight to a certain supplier. Now that is how most of these Eurobonds don't even come to Kenya. They borrow it in the US. When it comes on board, send it to Cayman Islands. Borrow it in Dubai. When it's dispersed, go straight to the UK. Those are just examples that I'm giving you. Thirdly, what they did is, in terms of budgeting, they actually allowed government to proceed spending without looking for any approval. So they would spend and then they come to parliament. What do? They only report that we've spent this amount of money, we add it into the supplementary budget, and you're good to go. So you find, as we speak today, and as I've heard you mention several times, State House has already finished its budget for the year. They've not looked for any other approval, and they are still spending more money even today as we speak. By the time they'll bring the next supplementary budget, they're actually not even looking for approval because they've already spent it. Whether you approve it or not, your pesa is to make. So our mess started there. We allowed, and I think also another thing is, Treasury was supposed to be in the new constitutional structure. Treasury was supposed to be like another independent arm of government. So it was supposed not to be controlled straight by a CS. What did they do? I think around that amendment or another amendment, they brought it back. So Treasury today, for example, reports, I think, straight to the CS. So those payments and whatever, all of them come from. If we had a controller of budget that has power to stop a certain over budgeting or a certain spending, the controller of budget should not have allowed State House to overspend its budget in 6 months. But we all know these institutions that are also supposed to be independent are not independent. And the mess continues and it continues again. Ni nani atatutibu? I don't know. But I think we are in a big, big, big mess. And that is why we keep going for more taxes, more deductions, and many, many more of these things. Thank you, La.
Court FM. Let the music play.
All right, Diamonds, thank you. I hear
Did
you.
you hear me?
And
Okay.
yeah, sure. I hear you. Just trying to digest and listen through. I'm not certain about the issue of the budget from State House, if it's the year or the fiscal year. I might need to be educated on the same. Probably I missed something on that. Did you mean the fiscal year or did you mean the year?
No, State House, for example, had a budget of about 7.5 billion this year for the financial year. By the end of December, or by the end of January this month, by the end of January, which is last month, they had already spent over 10 billion, which is their budget for 12 months. They've overshot it by an extra 3 billion, even before getting to the 8th month of the year. I don't know if you're getting it. They've spent over 200% of the budget.
All right, I hear you. Very interesting conversation tonight. I don't know, Obet. Some of the questions you're raising are very fundamental, ladies and gentlemen. And then we hang in between because it's expected of us to defend this constitution and protect it. It is also imperative that we do not just become part of the problem statement makers, we become part of the solutions. And that's why sometimes I feel a bit frustrated and in between, trying to understand what can be done differently. I would love to find out from 254, whose hand is up. Do you want to add something on that and then probably try give us some good prescription, if any?
Thank you, Eli. Well, I'm not a doctor. I just wanted to comment something interesting that Diamond said about the status of a shooting its budget. So imagine there's a simple analogy where people say monkey see, monkey do. So if the highest office on the land cannot keep within a budget, how do you expect counties to keep within a budget? How do we, you know, um, members of parliament, state corporations to stick within budget? It becomes an anomaly because they can't just do the right thing. Now, I know it sounds very difficult for people to say or people to have this discussion because I've said it before, and this becomes part of the solution. And much as people don't like hearing it, I think it is a very important place to place this in the mindset of people. One, we need to start defunding the pay scales of some of these public. And I say that categorically because the reason why you have people chasing these jobs is because there's a lot of money being promised for these jobs. I mean, a very simple example is if you're saying you're having a member of parliament control 50 million every year. This person has, you have no idea if they've had any fiscal, responsibility in their life. All they claim to say is that I'm a millionaire. I own this, I own that. And I've repeated it severally, and people need to start taking note. Whenever some of these people come to any forum of an interview, anything to do with an interview, whenever you ask them, state your achievements. What have you achieved? Why do you want this role? Tell us what you've been able to achieve. 99.99% of them will start talking about the offices, not the results of the jobs that they did before. So, for example, if you start asking, for example, somebody like John Buddy, and I'm sorry to use that name, some people might find it offensive, but he's been on record coming to a radio station and being asked this question, and he started saying, "No, I had the privilege to be appointed in this office." Now, how is that an achievement? I don't think that's an achievement. So they value the position they hold more than the work they are supposed to do. And that's the point I'm trying to drive home. So people need to start thinking, as a country, we need to start defunding some of these offices. And I remember in a space before, I asked this question and some people got very offended. But then I asked this very simple question. Why is it that, our head of state earns a salary? When he becomes head of state, de facto, he lives on our taxes. Whenever he moves on our taxes. If he gets is paid for by our taxes. And same applies to First Lady and his family. And the family, sorry. So the real question I have is, why do they need a salary? By pure definition, they actually earn through the allowances we give them. And so when they leave office, they normally get a package as a send-off package. We've seen this happen in countries. So why is it that it doesn't happen in Kenya? Because the belief was that if you pay these people well, then stop them from stealing. But we've clearly seen that has not worked. So just like the saying goes, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. For me, it is very simple. Let's have a proper conversation and start saying if you start defunding some of these positions in public offices, you might actually get people who actually want to serve people. We are here beating a drum about Talanta Stadium, but we're not talking about people sleeping hungry in this country. We talked about money being set aside for flooding, yet Nairobi still floods more than a year later when it rains. I mean, part of the solution starts with such kind of decisions. Start defunding some of these offices, make them less lucrative financially so that we have people who can come in and focus and actually deliver results. That is number one. Number two, because I'll try and give only four solutions to this. Number two is people need to keep asking these hard questions, because at no point in time is when we stop asking is when they feel bold enough to keep repeating the same thing, because they know the result, they know the outcome. The auditor general will raise queries, the control of budget will raise queries, and we will make noise, and when we keep quiet, another scandal comes out. It's been happening over and over again. I've just mentioned in my first submission a couple of scandals that still to date have no resolution. Solution number three, I think whenever people want to have an opinion, these opinions must not only be stated in terms of social media or, part of normal conversation. I think people need to engage more with public offices, in the sense that let it not be that an audit query is only coming out is when we are asking these questions. I think people should come out and ask those questions. For example, we spent money to put that Galana Kulalu project the first time. What happened to that money? The residents of that county must ask those questions. The residents of Nairobi should ask those questions today. Okay, so side after the construction of the expressway to rebuild this so-called A104 Mombasa Road. Where is that money today? We pay fuel levy every single time we fuel our cars, or even board matatus. This money is being collected. Where is this money going? Those questions need to come from every single aspect, so that every single person who holds that office, male or female or otherwise, most of those people who are office holders can feel the heat is coming to their office for accountability. That is exactly when we can start having proper conversations. And finally, I think this is part of the solution. We should stop accepting things because they're convenient to us. So, for example, and as I'm landing, Obed, I see your hand. When we say that NGCDF is illegal, it's unconstitutional, just because somebody in my village back home is able to get that money, it now doesn't make it legal. Just because it's my family member who gets that money doesn't make it constitutional. So, something, if it is declared unconstitutional from the get go, we should say no to it. And any MP who says otherwise, we should send them packing. As simple as that. Those are grounds for recalling some of these MPs. So let's not accept mediocrity at whatever point,
Yeah.
just because it's convenience, because it serves us, or it benefits people we know, or it benefits our family members,
Yeah.
or our own people we live with in our own homes. So I think for me, those four would be points of where we can start getting a solution. And I'm happy to hear from fellow speakers or anyone on the space or in other platforms who can also have, ideas on these solutions. Thank you. Back to you, Eli.
Awesome.
So
Obed.
254, my hand was up, not because I was trying to tell you to end your conversation, but
Sure.
rather to try and signal that I need to say something.
Sure.
So I think the reality is we've allowed, and this remains a fact, that we've respected mediocrity. And because mediocrity is too loud, we think that's the right thing. For a long time, when you have to ask questions about how government is spending resources, and guess who answers questions? Farouk Kibet, the people who respond to us, Oscar Sudi, somebody who can find even time to speak in parliament, but he has time to insult people who are cleverer than him. Let's start there. It is a problem. And because these people are too loud, they think like they know better than we all do. It hurts. There's a reason why I was asking about our debt portfolio. Because there's a desire for government to tell us what is working, but not even tell us what they're doing with our money. Half the time, why would State House, for instance, be spending over 10 billion? We're talking 11 billion today, and their budget is 7 billion. They're over by 4 billion. And you tell me that's how a country should be run. Honestly, we have reason to get angry. But we are part of the problem sometimes as well. Because money is stolen. And what we say? Tukule hii pesa ni mali ya umma. Na tukule kwa sasa, and we've seen it. Eat the money, vote for someone. And then we decide we're going to punish people for stealing from us. How? I hate to sound like this, but truthfully, if poverty is a problem, and having seen what happened in 2024, when everybody put their hands on deck and pushed an agenda, it is possible to make the president run from State House. He can. If all Kenyans agreed that there's a problem, and the problem is the presidency and how this country is governed. And if what I'm seeing, 202 happened because Kenyans decided we are tired, but we punished Moi, put in Kibaki, and then we had a similar problem. So this time we need to vote, not with emotions, with a realistic position, knowing this is the direction we need to take. We need people who are accountable and are able to answer. Because as a public, we are owed information by the government, and it is our right. We have access to information and we should be able to demand for information. When government does not provide, the question I ask is, what's our recourse? And that's where probably we need to start asking. If government does not provide information that Kenyans are seeking for, what is our recourse? Can we go to court and force them to give us that information, or what is the recourse to it?
You know, I love the fact that you're asking about recourse and going to court, because I know there are a lot of institutions, including the Katiba Institute, who keep going to court. And a lot of favorable results come from those court, because then how they are able to argue the cases. But then again, how do you and I become part of this bigger talk? And Nyorude, great to see you on that line. I also see you, Engineer Eugene. Thank you for tuning in. Mareba, I also recognize your presence. I recognize you just too. And a lot of you who are also watching us on the TikTok stream, thank you for being here tonight. We do appreciate you. Rather, on our X broadcast stream, thank you for being here. Let's keep the conversation moving as we try to understand how well we can be able to become part of the solution in building the kind of country we so much desire. Evidently, our political leaders cannot escape the responsibility of getting us where we are. But then Mwananchi, on the other hand, is also part and parcel of the problems we are talking about. Therefore, I've heard about us getting angry enough or not being angry enough. Case in point, I'm also well informed that as we speak tonight, the money that was free, it's almost coming to an end. It looks like the pockets are running dry. Is it free money? That one that people have their stars. I don't know about Nyorude. Did you get your star, or you still starstruck? I would love to find out, because you know, we might be here thinking things are not working, but when you see the likes of Honorable Mbadi becoming almost like a village wailing machine, then you wonder, who is the minister here? It's a bit disappointing. And maybe let me try and figure out this. When political leaders who are vastly engaged in politics speak, we can excuse it for political talk. But then what happens when it's a minister who's been appointed into a public office to serve public good? And they have the audacity to say, I will defend the rights of Nyorude and not the right of Kipkemoi or the rights of, Chemtai, the rights of Likuyani somewhere there, the rights of Babutale, whatever it is you want to call them. So I want to understand, how then do we all of us converge, and at what point do we converge and change the direction of this conversation? Because for me, it starts with the conversation. It is never about chest thumping. It's never about who can shout out the most, because they have proved to us when they're given microphones, they can shout. When they are in parliament, they can shout, if not sleep. When they are at funerals, they can actually also shout. So the only thing we can do as Kenyans is find out, how do we converse? That's what I want to have. 254, your hand is up once again.
No, Eli, I just wanted to mention one thing, and one of the results, if people want an example of how accepting mediocrity creates a lot of chaos, look at all these countries that are suffering from accepting mediocrity. A very good example is Zimbabwe. I mean, I can also give an example of Malawi. I just happen to have colleagues who are from these countries, and I can tell you for free. Ask them today, when did it go wrong, and what would they have done? We are trading. We are flirting with disaster as a country, because we keep saying that, every time we question these leaders, it always is called a tribal issue, or an unrightful purpose. So for me, it's a very simple challenge. If you don't want to be criticized or questioned on what you do, then why did you get into public offices in the first place? You'd have stayed in your house. No one was asking you to come to serve the public. But if you serve the public and you're being given access to billions, if not trillions, of Kenya shillings to manage on behalf of 55 million people, and you don't want to be asked because you hold a PhD, I use that very intentionally, then you have no business in that office. Go home. Spend your time in peace in your four walls in your home. No one will come and question you. That's my point. Back to you, Eli.
All right, 254. The good thing is I don't have a PhD. We only know one doctor in the making that is in the room, but we will not mention who. It could be Nyorudo. And Nyorude, that's a definite DNA in their tribe. So, Dr. Nyorude in the making, greetings to you. Stella, I would love to, try and pick up a few issues with you. And that is formulating a decisive nation when it comes to engagement and involvement, not just in advocacy, but in strategic advocacy for management and good stewardship of our public resources. The budget season is in place, Stella. What can we do more that we are not doing?
Eli, we are not involved enough. We have never been involved enough. And the reason I say this is because we always wake up to the budget process during the finance bill. Tukisikia tu finance bill hivi, everyone, influencers, propagandists, spaces, kila mtu picks the conversation. But then remember, as we said last week, the budget process begins in September or August after a fiscal year begins. So we are talking of the budget process for FY 2026-2027 began last year in August, when the Treasury published the budget review and outlook paper, when the Treasury again published later on some documents, and even recently when they published the budget policy statement. So if you ask most of us who has gone through that particular document, most of us haven't. But this is the document that gives the plan for the fiscal year and even the next 3 fiscal years. So we need to know what is in it. We don't want to be amused or amazed at the time or at the point when Mbadi is reading the budget at parliament, we need to know and to work with it, like work with the budget process from the beginning with everything in us. Let's know what has been budgeted for in the education system. And as you were asking in a previous conversation, for instance, the education sector wants to be added 30 billion for reforms. Then we should also be asking ourselves, what is it for as early as now? So that when we are invited to give our comments and feedback, we are able to say, we want to know where this is going, or we are not satisfied. We are not convinced that this makes sense. Actually, in our view, these are the priorities that you should start doing or start by appropriating funds. But if we are not involved enough, and not being involved doesn't mean we are fighting or we are rioting. Let's, as much as we want to do that, let's complement that with being involved and making the rules, and in this case, I'm not even talking about rules, is making or appropriating the budget ourselves. As much as we've been given a draft document, let us also be part of these appropriations, these approvals. Let's put our effort and our participation as much as possible, and not only on the finance bill, because for me, the finance bill is a symptom. It just shows where we want to get the money, but the appropriations bill is the major thing that we should be looking at, because this is what is giving money, allocating money, dividing the cake, our Kenyan cake, to the very sectors that are supposed to get the money. So if we are not able to say, we want this to go here, or in our opinion, this should go here and not here, then we are not participating in what matters most for us. Back to you, Eli.
Asante sana. Stella, you say we are not engaged enough. We wait for what I will call the steroid time for us to be able to jump into action. And probably that's one of the problems we are suffering from. Glad to be joined by Nyorudi. I see you, Diamonds. Let's just allow Nyorudi some time to submit, if you don't mind, and then we'll come back to you. Nyorudi, since the conversation has been moving and you've been listening in, I will not throw any specific question to you, rather allow you to just share your mind with us based on the kind of issues we are trying to address tonight. Nyorudi, the mic is yours. Kindly proceed. All right, I guess.
I think it's back to listener.
Yeah, there seemed to be an issue. I'll just try to, fix that. Nyorudi, if you can drop and request once again, that will help a lot. Let's have you, Diamonds. You had your hand up.
Yes. I wanted to say, I think one of the biggest problems and the loopholes that we have in our financing and today is that even these corruption issues, most of them are because of vendor-driven projects. Most of these projects where you get 10 billion stolen, 50 billion stolen, 100 billion stolen, most of them are vendor-driven. I even don't think they go through the budget. For example, this Talanda thing, I don't think it's in any budget. Just check that, but I don't think. They want to do this expressway, for example, when it was being done. I don't think that went through any budget. And we all remember the secrecy and the things that happened around that project. The FGR itself, I also don't think it was through a budget. I think it was a standalone project, and that's where laptops were being bought by over 3 million. And I think pens and whatever were being bought by over 70,000 each. Some of these, SHA, for example, the deal that happened around SHA was really not through any budget. Our budgets might have their own problems, but where we bleed the most is when we do these vendor driven projects, these big projects. That's where these guys, they love it. That's where they operate in billions. All those big projects, that is where they now sweep with the money. in billions. If we figure out, if we figure out a way of stopping this overspending, then it sorts 90% of our problem. I'll give you one big example. So today, or I think yesterday, the president said the next biggest project they want to do in Nairobi is to do an expressway from Thika to Musiamil in Nairobi CBD. Now, when you think about it, Thika Road, as it were at this point in time, uh, is not really struggling with the trunk. It struggles with what we call the exit. So, for example, all the vehicles that get into the CBD get stuck as they get into the CBD. Vehicles that try to get into Kiambu Road get stuck as they get into Kiambu Road. Why? Because there are many vehicles trying to use Kiambu Road, but it is a smaller road. Vehicles exiting into Kenyatta Road are exiting into a smaller road. So the solution for, say, Thika Road is actually not to do another flyover. The solution is to ensure that these other feeder roads and exits are sorted. But no one wants to do that because there is a bigger chunk of money that you will make if you do this bigger project. Nairobi probably on its mobility plans should be doing something around the railways, it should be doing something about metros, should be doing some other form of transport because not enough roads will solve the problem of mobility in the CBD. But no one wants that. It won't give them money. So our issue is I think 90% of our big scandals come through vendor driven projects. The guy comes, shows up, and tells government, I will sort this problem and this is my deal. Just like the Adani one. If Kenyans should not have stopped it, that really didn't go through the budget. I think it was just some other thing. So I think we have some work to do through the budget, but we also have to open our eyes in these other external vendor driven projects. And lastly, I think 254, I think the courts allowed CDF to proceed, unfortunately. Thank you.
Asante sana Diamonds. Looks like my co-host is on holiday. I just want to confirm if he's still around. Obed, are you still here?
I am, Eli. You had already queued in your Ruder.
Do you need some time
like
to reconsider your position? Do you need the work-life balance?
If you're going to sack me, you'd like to sack me in public, and that's not how it works, but it's still fine. Let's allow your Ruder.
Moi is still here, so...
Boy died.
Haya basi to you, sir, so that you can welcome Yerude.
So, but all said, I think as you did earlier say, let's allow our, it's called those people who don't know. He is a very good cook for something that a lot of us love, but he'll talk about it. However, let's allow him to make a contribution to what he's professionally allowed to talk about and he's passionate about. So, Oche, with your permission, let me welcome you to the conversation and good to see you after a long time. Karibu sana.
Thank you so much, Mizani, Obed, Likuyani, and everyone else. Thank you so much. I've seen my sister. She didn't, Stella, she didn't tell me that she transitioned, but that story for another day. I will get her to buy coffee for that, and Diamonds and everyone else. So I hadn't planned to say anything because in any case I don't have anything to say. I'm a distinguished villager. Villagers don't have much to say. But all I can say is I want to share in the sentiments aired by my sister, Swakei, that Kenyans, majority of them are reactionary citizens. They are not proactive citizens. Most of them are not proactive. And what the available evidence has shown us is that most Kenyans engage or attempt to engage in the budget to a smaller extent during the formulation and the focus here, the bias here has already been captured on the ways of financing the budget, aka the finance bill. But where the money goes, the appropriation, there's no much participation or involvement, citizen involvement in this. And that is where the details are. And just for purpose of context, unless I stand to be guided, but unless things change, there are only 4 ways of financing a budget, a public budget. Of course, at the risk of appearing to be repeating the obvious, the first way of financing the budget, of course, is through taxation. And the second way of financing the budget is through borrowing, which could be either internally or externally. And then the third way is through donor support or development partner support, what would come by way of grants. And then lastly, there's an animal we're calling PPP, public-private partnership. And I rarely agree with Diamonds on most things, but there are few that we do agree with him on. There's some of these mega projects that we're being told about. Some of them, I bet you'd really struggle to locate them in the budget, but they're being hidden under the auspice of PPP, public-private partnership. I share in the school of thought of those who believe that the biggest problem in this country, among other problems, one of them is conflict of interest. And conflict of interest comes with this elder sister called budgeted corruption, whereby the few mandarins, and I'm not accusing anybody, but I'm just stating the obvious, the few mandarins who know the thinking of the government of the day, they therefore ensure that if that's what Diamond is calling tender-driven projects. So because I am conflicted, I end up prioritizing a project because I've already asked myself what is a need for me. And because I'm working in cahoots with Diamond and LI, therefore, we end up projecting our interests, and this is being disguised as a public interest. And I want you to do a small brain check. The moment you hear this government is a bit notorious. The moment you hear the government saying that we want to do a new initiative, for example, we want to build an expressway from Thika to Museum Hill, I can assure you that is a business being created to benefit a number of people.
Yeah.
But the outcome of that particular initiative would be a Gorofa kind of a road called Expressway. And the other time we were told that cabinet had approved issuance of a new digital driving license.
Yeah.
I don't know how digital is that one. Is it different from this smart one? So they are hidden as policy interventions meant to correct something else, which is not market failure. But the moment you hear that, proceed and conclude that kuna mtu anatafutiwa biashara na kuna mtu ashapatikana ku facilitate that kind of. So it's some, for want of a better word, mercantilist way of thinking and doing things. And therefore, we need to be vigilant as citizens and participate in all the entire process. The budget has got four phases: the formulation, the approval at the legislature, both at the national and the county and the subnational level, and then there is the execution of the implementation, and then there is the oversight or auditing or evaluation. But more often than not, Kenyans are notorious in having a greater appetite for participating in a formulation and neglecting other phases. And that is where the details are.
Yeah.
Because in formulation, those are declared intentions as endorsed by the legislature. But in implementation, now this is where you are directing your money. After directing your money to where to go, you are now ensuring that it is actually where it was directed to go. You are spending it. So the issues of quality, effectiveness, efficiency also come in. So that at the end of the day, we see what we get, one type of auditing that we normally call value for money. We said we are building an ECD. Have we built the right dimensions? Have we used the right materials? Have you built it where it will lend value and helping in arriving at getting service delivery to the people to whom it was intended for? So those value for money questions will only be asked when we walk through the process of implementation and the process of oversight, or the process of evaluation or auditing. And I know people would argue that we might not have the capacity to do auditing. No, a lot of CSOs and some of PFM practitioners have participated in processes that provide or arm the citizen with social accountability tools and frameworks, so they're able to assess their own level, to assess and find out if there was for money. So that would help, because the budget cycle is cyclic. And that at the end of one process marks the beginning of the other. So let us not be fixated by providing lip service towards citizen involvement in budget process at the formulation stage. And again, this is limited towards making pronouncements or noise or constructive engagement semblance on the finance bill. No, we also need to pay attention to where the money is going, the appropriation bill, because that is where most of the details are. And once the budget has gotten a nod by the assembly or the executive or the legislature, we should always follow the shilling to find out where has it gone where it was directed to go. And if it has landed at where it was directed to go, how has it been used? And has it been used to provide value? What is the outcome? We also need, as a citizen, to walk away from this activity-driven productivity. We need to focus on an outcome-based productivity. The issue of it's as basic as asking a basic question. For example, you and I agree that it is possible to have a teacher in school without having a teacher in class. So if we were having a matrix that asks whether the teacher was in school, yes, this teacher will be in school 100% of the times. But if we take the conversation a little bit further, is the teacher in class as a way of ensuring that he promotes access to education, as a basic example, then that now tells us that we are now walking away from activity-based productivity to outcome-based productivity. So much as we want a government as a duty bearers to do their part, us as the right holders have a responsibility to ensure that we do our part if we were to make this country a better place to live in. Just as I said, I didn't have much to say. I was not prepared to say anything. That is all I can submit for now.
Thank you very much, Nyarude. Obets, go ahead.
He's a very intelligent villager who knows how to disguise his intelligence. But what I love that he said and spoken to is the fact that we have to lay the blame where it belongs. Yes, the duty bearers, or the political class, or the people who are politicians have their blame, but we also have a blame on our part. We need not to have an appetite for or get excited when things are almost coming to an end, instead of addressing and following issues through. The problem with us Kenyans is we tend to follow a wave. When the details are required, we don't like to be involved. And I think we need to change that. We need to improve on that. Be people who do not just complain, but offer solutions. And by that, we need to be active participants in the process of making policy. so that we don't get caught in a situation where it almost feels like it's a surprise for us that, oh, we have a finance bill. A finance bill doesn't come from the air. It is a process. A budget making process, it's a longer process. So let's get involved and not shout when it's convenient, but it does not make sense or add value to the process. Because it's very little that we get to do at that point, because most of the work has been done. And without belaboring the point, I've seen Westerners come into the conversation, and nice to see you, Western. We're talking about generally what has been our biggest problem, and today we woke up to a big headline on the Daily Nation, suggesting 11 billion. Probably there are audit queries around it. We don't conclusively say that's the position, but then it speaks to issues that we've seen in this country, the malaise and the problem of us not being able to account properly for resources that are in the hands of government. That said, I don't want to ask you a specific question, but I'd like you to weigh in to this conversation generally. And is it that we massively have an appetite to do what is wrong, or we have an interest and desire to always ensure that public resources are misused in the interest of the few people who are involved in that business? Welcome, Weston.
Obeds, I say very little because we have leaders we deserve. These are people we deserve, really. They are not strange people. They are not aberrations. These are not creatures from outer space. Their behavior is not weird. It's normal. Let me just give you some recent examples. If you follow, there have been interviews for people to occupy various positions in the judiciary. And you can even go to parliament where they do vetting time and again. Okay, so you ask, for instance, Raila Odinga's widow how much she's worth. What do you want to do with that information? Well, she tells you she's worth 500 million Kenya shilling. What do you do with that answer? You who is asking. What do you want to do with it? And if you don't know what she's worth, you think she will tell you what she's worth? If you who is asking don't know, she will tell you exactly what she's worth. Many people are asked the same question, whether they're being vetted for cabinet secretary position. How much? 700 million. How much? 1 billion. How much? And the conversation just continues. Like, what kind of a question is this? So what do you want to find out? What do you want to find out from this person? Okay, Oalo tells his wife, I don't know how many, how much in terms of billions. Okay, so do you believe him? Do you doubt him? What's the relevance of the question? Because you can only ask the question if you know what the person is worth. So you want to test their credibility. You know what the person is worth. So you ask them. I want to hear from you, how much are you worth? Because I know how much you're worth. Judges, how much are you worth? You say any figure, and the conversation continues. Carol Omondi, I gave ODM 2 million US dollars 2013. 2 million US dollars 2013. How much money is that? How much money is that? And what did you get in return? Or where did you get this money that you can just give out so much money like that? Where did you get it? Now, I gave them 7 million US dollars in 2017. Where do you get this money? We don't ask those questions. We just proceed. That's what I'm saying. These people are not strange people. They are quintessentially Kenyans, members of the Kenyan society. There would be outrage. In any other given society, there would be outrage, especially where there's so much poverty. There would be outrage. You will have to explain where you got your money. And state agencies will come for you. That is if they're not working. If for some reason they didn't know what you were doing, you will have to explain, because you've gone public to state before the world how much you're worth. Now you'll have to explain. What have you been doing? What do you do? How much tax do you pay? Those questions, you respond to them. Here we just proceed. We just proceed with our conversation. Then you give members of parliament money to run so-called development projects. Who does that? These are politicians. Politicians. Who does that? And the matter goes to the High Court. The High Court rules, no, this is unconstitutional. It goes to the Court of Appeal. Court of Appeal says, no, there's nothing unconstitutional. Like, we're a weird society. Weird. A politician who is seeking re-election or who can run for re-election again and again and again, you give them money to do what with it? Or to run development projects, to give out bursaries, to build classrooms, to build roads. Like, it's just weird, completely weird. Like, it's weird completely. So you think judges disagree with that kind of arrangement? They don't, because there's also corruption in the judiciary, isn't it there? They don't disagree with it. They don't. Because if you are to launch a campaign to clean up corruption within the Kenyan state, I can tell you many judges will go to jail. Fact. Politicians will go to jail. Fact. Head teachers, principals would go to jail. Fact. They have turned schools into what? You've not had cases where students, of course, their parents, 50,000 Kenyan shillings for a school uniform, and you have to pay to the school, and you will get everything from school. And then compare the prices at that school and the prices outside. What is that? What do you call that? What do you call that? That's corruption. Parents, but they pay the money, don't they pay? They go, yo, the school says you must pay 50,000 for your child's uniform, and if you have got two, 100,000 Kenya shillings, and they pay. So what corruption are we against? Which one is it? Which one? Go to churches. Aren't they corrupt? They're corrupt. They corrupt. We just look and proceed. But for some reason, at the macro level, at the parliamentary level, at the state level, we see it. But the entire society is mired in corruption. And it's a way of life. I can put it to you. It's a way of life. Otherwise, we would have no place for these people. Let me ask you, Albert, do you know why in developed countries there's a period for campaigns? Do you know why that is the case? Because campaigns are expensive. To campaign is expensive. So they give you a duration to campaign. Once the campaigns are over, people go back to business. When elections are over, you go to that country the following day. You would imagine, no, there was no election here. People are back to business. With us, don't these people campaign 24/7, 5 years, the entire electoral cycle? Whether
No,
they're
actually,
government.
Weston, what you're saying is true. We have a president who's been campaigning since he was elected instead of doing the job.
Whether it is in the opposition or is in the government, everybody else is campaigning. No one does any work. So you ask, when do these people work? Everyone is campaigning. These things people hold every other weekend. Those are campaigns. Tell me that there's any weekend the Kenyan media doesn't regale you with some very weird, sordid pronouncements by some politician in a funeral or somewhere else. Tell me, there's a weekend. That's why in Kenya news, I don't know if a country where news takes, I don't know, 1 hour. Move from this funeral to the other funeral to the other. In some country, news takes 20 minutes. It's over. It's over. 20 minutes. Here, 1 hour and they go on. After 1 hour, somebody comes to the studio to come and talk about the very things that people watch during. It's bizarre, like it's completely bizarre. And then that thing about Ndego Commission in the 70s, about government people can do business with the government. It's still here. It has not changed. It has not changed. It's still here. So as long as it's still there, what do you have? You have no industry for anything. The only lucrative industry is politics in Kenya and such third world countries. The only lucrative industry is politics. If you don't know anything to do, get into politics. That's where you make so much money within no time. And no one asks you any questions. Isn't that the case? An indicator of underdevelopment. If you want to know a country is underdeveloped, see how people make money. In underdeveloped, poverty-stricken, third world countries, people make money out of politics. In other places, people make money from innovation, invention, and doing business, running business. It's not selling snake oil. They do business. Lawyers in Kenya, what do? Don't they just milk money from the government? What were they protesting the other day when there was a ruling that the government can only use lawyers on a retainer, not private law firms? What did they say? Didn't they protest? That's corruption. Do you know how much money they bill the government? Keep Koril Donald the other day was billed Nairobi County, I don't know, was it 2 billion Kenya shilling? What kind of nonsense is that? Like, what were you doing? You represented them in what case? What was at stake? I think we're not alive to what's going on before us. So it's not going to change because the Kenyan societies are made about corruption. That's why the elite are corrupt. It's just that simple. It's that the person who is corrupt, I'll make noise because I don't support them politically. I'll make noise because they don't come from my ethnic group. I'll make noise because I just don't like them. Otherwise, in principle, the Kenyan society is not against corruption, Obets. It's so unfortunate. I yield.
Thank you so much, Weston. I think you leave it at a point where it's exactly true. If corruption works, for me, it is not a bad thing. But if it's other people doing it and it's benefiting them, it's a problem. But at the same time, why are we averse to accountability? Why are we averse to doing what is right? Why do we like copying the good things in theory, but practically it's a problem? Why don't we hold, like you say, other jurisdictions? People have a period for campaigns. There's a limit on campaign financing, and you have to declare where do people get money in this country. Status has blown its budget. The DP or the deputy president, similar. How do we sustain a country in perpetual campaigns, never doing any job, a president on top of cars every weekend, attending funerals, promising a lot of things, but doing his job? It's still nearly impossible. Then they come here, paint with a broad brush, and they are telling us the macros are looking good. What are you telling us about the ordinary folk who has nothing? Eli, it might sound like a rant, but we need to start calling people out for what they do. People lose their agency to make decisions when they become politicians. It was painful to listen to the deputy speaker today shouting at the top of our voice and making no point. It is the case that we are seeing John Mbadi doing. It is the case we are seeing with anybody supporting broad-based government. When they are put to task, they're making noise and not answering the questions they're being asked. I mean, it is for us to sit and ask ourselves, what kind of country do we want to become and where do we want to go to? Because as a matter of fact, and as Western has correctly put it, we are all corrupt. We love it. And unfortunately, unless we put a stop to it and start asking ourselves, where do we want to go? This is not going to end. I think, Eli, I'll put it back to you as we try and finalize this conversation.
Thank you very much, Obed. And I listened to Weston with a lot of keenness because he's speaking to a lot of serious issues that we need to be alive to. And some of them include, are not limited to, the fact that we are constantly in campaign mood and campaign mode. We are in campaign mood and mode. When you see the kind of shenanigans that have happened over the weekend, one would imagine that we have elections tomorrow. The mobilizations that go around it. And I fear for this country because every young person out there seems to be buying a dream called whatever it is that they are calling. Because apparently some people are already presidents. Some of them know how they'll guard the elections, if not the votes. And they know how not to have the elections not stolen. But they cannot figure out how to keep public funds safe. The very people, when they left office, they were told and they were called out for embezzlement. Because, it's funny, Obeds, because the current administration walked into office and claimed that the coffers were empty and they know who took the money. But I guess the people that took the money did not take the money. They just stored the money for them to go and collect. And that's why you cannot arrest them. And there is no evidence. After all, inajua ni mali ya umma. And mali ya umma has something in it. Inauma tu kama huyumi. Hiyo ndio mali ya umma. So, Obeds, it's our time to eat, I think. And for me, that word is not to really make us feel like we are entitled to fleecing this country. It is just how bad we've converted seasons, and we think if they did it, so we can. And we come to the table ready to devour this piece of meat called Kenya. It's unfortunate because sometimes we speak and feel like we are speaking to walls, akin to the aspect of trying to lecture a deaf person about how hearing is the best thing that would ever happen to them. Because to them, what you need to speak to them with is either your lips or probably your hand signs. But we have become not just deaf, but we are numb to the hemorrhage we are making in this country. I wish and pray for a day that we will think different. And I know Japonji wants to run for office one day, probably. I'm not so certain. But when he does, please don't go and also make it your time to eat. Douglas, when you decide to run for public office, don't go and make it time for you to go and eat. So is Stella and the real Joe, among others. It's my prayer that we will love this country so much that we will actually think about posterity. It is my prayer that we will love this country so much that you will feel ashamed to even misappropriate a shilling, because every money you hear that has been eaten in billions has been budgeted for from every single coin. So what happens between the budgeting to the expenditure? It's what I don't know. But as long as your relative is eating, why should you complain anyway? Someone reminds me once you want to take a passport, it's when you know why it is important to bribe. A simple document that is supposed to be provided by your government. You need to know a person. Like, what kind of a country do we live in? In 2026. Obed, is your hand up ama mimi naona zangu?
Hapana, mi sijainua mkono, but you speak true facts. The only thing is that, as Weston said, it is working for you at the time. So even when you get enraged, you probably are forced to do that which they are asking you, and you justify it by saying, I didn't have a choice.
Well, I didn't have a choice, but I know Joyce. Have a good evening, ladies and gentlemen. That has been the bigger picture. Hopefully, you'll be able to think through tonight.
The Bigger Picture with Obets Oriku and Likuyani Eli. For more information, visit www.mizani254.org. Mizani 254, where the scales of balance are restored and meaningful conversations thrive. To advertise with us, reach us via the email marketing@courtfm.co.ke or call us on 0714 308 277. Court FM. Let the music play. Welcome to NK Home Care Services, where quality healthcare meets the comfort of your home. We offer professional nursing care, caregiver support, mental and neonatal services, physiotherapy, post-surgery care, palliative care, and ambulance services, all tailored to your needs. Our mission is to empower you or your loved ones to live with dignity and independence. With compassion, respect, and professionalism, we're here to support your journey to a better health. Visit us today at 54 Real Estate off Mombasa Road, or call us on 0768 400 800, or find us online at www.fifthgenerationaloutsourcing.com. NK Home Care Services, caring for you wherever you are. You're listening to Court FM. Let the music play.
And thank you very much. That marks the end of our broadcast tonight in the bigger picture. You can continue listening in to the next session, which is some slow jump downs courtesy of Court FM. For those of you who are on YouTube, we cannot unfortunately stream that on YouTube, but you can move on to our X broadcast, which is happening at Court FM_KE. And join me at Likuyani Eli on Anko Maju pale ndani ya TikTok. For now, that has been the conversation, and looking forward to engaging you again in the next one. Let's go to the next session as we try to reflect on the kind of country we want to have. Good evening. Once again, my name is Likuyani Eli.
The bigger picture with Obet Oriku and Likuyani Eli. For more information, visit www.mizani254.org. Mizani 254, where the scales of balance are restored and meaningful conversations thrive.